literally a bowl of heaven for me. So the first thing we're going to do is turn a store-bought stock into something super magical. A little bit of oil and some onion. And we're basically building up a whole bunch of spicy, yummy, umami flavor. And I just want these onions to really soften up. You must always be patient when you're sizzling onions. We really want that soft, sweet, savory flavor, not raw onion flavor. So my onions have turned translucent. Time to add my garlic. And then I've got some slices of ginger here. I've sliced them really large because I want to fish them out at the end. And they're just going to infuse their lovely gingeriness into our broth. And now for some kimchi. So you can find kimchi in most supermarkets these days. Look for it in the fridge section. And I've got here the kimchi cabbage itself. And then my little tip for you always is to just steal a little bit of the kimchi juice out of the packet as well and put a little bit of that in whatever dish that you're cooking, a stir fry or anything like that, because it's got loads of flavor. I'll pour that in there. Okay, now the chicken. And I think for this dish, really you want the dark meat because we want everything to break down, get all gelatinous and soft, and we want that really intense flavor as well. And this is gonna simmer for a while, so breasts will dry out a little bit. And I've also kept these pieces on the bone because I think that the bone just tends to add a little bit more of that gelatinous texture to the soup. We want that chicken to get all mixed up in there with everything else. And then we want some soy sauce. Okay, now time for the stock. So if you've got a beautiful homemade stock at home, please go ahead and use it. I'm happy to doctor up a store-bought stock always if it's gonna save me a little bit of time. If I'm having a weeknight dinner. And to be honest, you're adding so much flavor with this kimchi that you won't even notice. And one other little secret ingredient that I have up my sleeve is Korean gochujang, and that's a fermented chili paste. It is savory, full of umami, and it's not super spicy, which is why I like to use a whole heap of it because it adds so much extra flavor and such a lovely color too. So the easiest way to do this is to just pop a ladle into your soup, and I'm gonna just dissolve that paste because it's quite thick in that ladle rather than just sort of having it float around in there. Mix that through. Now just bring that up to a gentle simmer and then put the lid on, and I want that to keep going and simmering away for about an hour until that chicken is full tender. So let's have a look and see what's been happening in our pot. And that is seriously magical. That fragrance is amazing. So I know a classic ramen broth would take 8 hours, 9 hours, but we're doing a shortcut version today. So this is still gonna have a huge amount of flavor, and just because, you know, I like to do things a little bit extra, we're gonna get it roasty and toasty and really lovely and golden in the oven. So I'm gonna pull out my chicken pieces. Okay, and we're gonna add even more flavor by just basting these guys with a little bit of sesame oil. And then just a little sprinkling of salt. Now pop these under a really hot oven grill for about 10 minutes or until they're beautifully golden. Okay, now remember those ginger pieces that we put in at the beginning? I'm just gonna take those out. And as always, I'm gonna check my broth for seasoning. That flavor, the kimchi, the spicy gochujang, incredible. Okay, so that chicken has undergone a magical transformation. It is beautiful and golden. Now, I'm gonna get it onto my chopping board. Okay, now this is the part you don't wanna miss, guys. This chicken is literally just falling away from the bone. I'm not even touching it with that knife almost. It's just coming straight off. Ridiculous, joyful, all of those things. Okay, these noodles are looking good. And of course, because it's ramen, I have giant bowls. Small bowl just wouldn't do. Now back to this amazing broth, and I just want to scoop out some little chunks of kimchi for each bowl. Make sure everyone gets a little portion. And now that glorious soup. Now of course I want some of these chicken pieces, and then the final touches. Egg and some spring onion. Now I am ready for the couch. Check out that ramen broth. If you didn't think it was possible to make ramen at home, believe my friends, we are gonna make an epic bowl of ramen noodle soup. And the first thing I wanna do is deal with our chicken wings. Now, The thing with any kind of broth, or when you're using bones for broth, the smaller the pieces that you can get them into, the more it will release flavor and gelatin from the bones and all those good things. So take your chicken wings, just slice through the joints so that you've got 3 pieces rather than the one big large one. We've got a whole big bowl of those here. So to kind of speed up the flavor process for our stock, I'm actually going to roast these first. So that's going to create like a browning and a Maillard reaction on the outside of the chicken, and it's that browning, that stuff there, that's the flavor we want in our soup. And then I want some carrots as well. And now let's get these guys started with some salt. Find that with broths, the more that you can layer flavor and seasoning, the better it will become. And then a little bit of oil just to get things started. Just give those a good mix. And I want to roast these in a hot oven for about 45 minutes or an hour until we get a really beautiful deep brown color. Now let's take a look at our chicken and carrot, and you can see the beautiful golden color we've got on that chicken. That is all flavor, my friends. Awesome. So I'm going to get this onto a heat, and I just want to heat this up until it's sizzling. Now this part is all about making sure we don't leave any of that beautiful browning behind on the pan. I'm going to deglaze the pan with a little bit of water, and now wait for that to start bubbling again. And now what you want to be doing is getting your spatula or your wooden spoon and really scraping up everything from the bottom of the pan. The water will help you and the heat will help you, but don't leave any of that flavor behind. Now, if you have a look, that liquid is a beautiful golden color already. So now that we've got all the bits and pieces off the bottom of the roasting tin, now we're going to get into our stock pot and start that broth going. So I want to get my chicken and that carrot into my pot. Now just take your pan and pour all of that delightful liquid over your chicken. And now for our aromatics. These are the special ingredients that are going to make our Shoyu Ramen broth super special. To start off with, we have konbu, which is dried seaweed. You can grab this at an Asian grocer or a Japanese supermarket. Now this is one of the essential ingredients for a traditional Japanese ramen broth. It's going to give us like a background savory flavor and a deep depth of flavor to our broth. Keeping on the same umami track, we've got some dried shiitake mushrooms and some spring onion for some nice aroma. And then I've got some garlic here. I've just sliced a whole head of garlic in half. That's going to go in, and then some slices of ginger. Now top that up with some more water. And now we add in the shoyu, or the soy sauce. Give that a stir. And now, one of my big tips for making a really beautiful, clear broth is to make sure that you don't simmer this too hard. We want a nice, gentle simmer for about 3 hours. And every so often while it's simmering, just take a spoon and take off any of the sort of white foamy bits and pieces that rise to the top. All right, see you in 3 hours. 3 hours later, and we did in the meantime have a wardrobe malfunction with some pork and some hot oil. Anyway, I'm fine, but the dress is not fine, so we've changed. We do things by the book here. We're not swapping in and out, as you know, it's all for real. So anyway, let's get back to our ramen broth, and I'm going to save these beautiful shiitake mushrooms, which are now lovely and rehydrated, and we can slice those up and use them in the soup. Oh, and this broth is smelling so amazing. I can't even tell you guys. Okay, so I'm going to just pull out all these big pieces of aromatics and the seaweed. Take those out first. And then just to make it easier to strain, I'm just going to start taking out these chicken pieces as well. And a slotted spoon is going to help you out here. So the thing with this chicken is that it's been in here for 3 hours, right? And all of its beautiful flavor has gone into our broth, which is great. But it does mean that the chicken itself, that chicken meat, kind of doesn't have much flavor. You can totally go ahead and shred it and eat it or add it to your noodle soup. But I tend to find it has lost a lot of its really good flavor. It's okay because my mum is here filming with me today, so she will happily take all of it home because you know Asian mums, they never waste anything. Okay, so this is looking good. I've got most of my chunky bits out, and I'm going to strain this through a fine mesh sieve. So if you don't have a really fine sieve at home, you might find that your broth has quite a few particles in it. If that's the case, just put down a cheesecloth or a coffee filter and run the broth through that as well. I mean, it's got nothing to do with the flavor. You can totally just leave it as it is, but if you want a restaurant style crystal clear broth, that's what you need to do. But this one's looking good because we've got a very fine mesh strainer here. Now, if you're a very patient person, which I generally am not when it comes to food, and we've already been simmering our broth for like 3 hours, you would put this into the fridge overnight, and then that would solidify the fat on the top of the broth, and you could just scoop it off. But I have a little trick to taking the fat off without having to wait. So if you use some paper towel and then just rest it on the top of your broth, paper towel will soak up most of the oil and the fat on the top. Let's do that a couple of times. Now look at that. Most of the fat and the oil is gone, and we are ready to serve this guy up. Okay, so now we've got a really great ramen broth. I'm gonna just take enough that I need for the 2 bowls that I'm gonna make today, because the rest I'm gonna save for later. This freezes really well. So I'm gonna let this broth come back up to a simmer. I want it really nice and hot. While it's doing that, I'm just gonna mix together a little seasoning. So I've got some soy sauce here, and I wanna mix in some mirin. So that's a Japanese cooking wine, a little bit sweet. So let's have a taste and see what we need to do here. This is such a complex broth. It's just, you know, you've got the beautiful savory flavors. I can taste that chicken and all those background flavors like the spring onion and the ginger and the dried shiitakes. Oh, so good. Okay, it does need seasoning though. So I'm gonna add in quite a bit of my seasoning sauce that I've made. And you can just do this to taste. So everyone likes a different level of saltiness, and this is something that you can adjust on your own. I'm also gonna add a little bit of just plain regular salt as well. Don't wanna darken the broth too much, but I do need some extra oomph in there. Now that is tasting perfect, lovely. So I've got my ramen noodles here, and I'm gonna ladle over that hot soup. Oh, look at the color of that amazing broth, so special. And now you can top this with a whole manner of different things. I happen to have some chashu pork or slowly braised pork belly that I made the other day. Now I've got a video on this on my YouTube channel, so you can check it out if you're interested in making it. So just put a slice of that on there. And I've got some of those sliced shiitakes, a little bit of spring onion, and then to me, ramen is not ramen without an egg. Ah, there we go. This is one comforting bowl of heaven. I can tell you that right now. You actually could believe you were eating this in a restaurant. You guys are gonna love this one. We're going to be doing a quite classic version of the birria side of things, which is a very traditional spiced and slow braised soup. And then we're going to add in our ramen elements at the end. So let's get on to doing the birria part first of all. So I'm going to use some beef ribs here. I love how like soft and gelatinous these guys get after this treatment. Just pop them into a tray here. And I want to get them all luxuriating in like some salt and pepper business. Make sure you're doing all the sides. And I really think at its heart, this dish is all about how you lay the flavors. So at each step, I want to be really careful to be seasoning and searing and doing all the things that are going to bring out the best spiced, beautiful flavors. Now just let those beef ribs sit. I need to make a marinade, which is also going to be part of the sauce later on. So it serves a double purpose. Now I'm starting off here with some chipotle in adobo sauce, so a nice smoky chili pepper kind of vibe going on here. And some tomato. Some vinegar. I'm using rice vinegar, which is an Asian style, but even just a white vinegar would do. Some garlic. Now I'm using some fresh oregano here just because I found some at my local market this morning, but you could also use dried too. And now for the spices. So some smoked paprika and some ground cumin. Now just give this a blitz. Wow, it's like I can already smell that birria, like smoked chili kind of thing going on. It's already making me smile. Okay, so just pour that over your beef ribs. Now make sure they're nicely covered. And you know that I am always an advocate of taking shortcuts whenever I can, but I do find that these really do benefit from an overnight marinade. It kind of really allows the beef to take on the flavor of that sauce, but also the acidity that's in the sauce and the salt that we put on the beef, it really kind of helps to tenderize the beef as well. So overnight in the fridge, please. So these are some ribs that I made yesterday because I was very organized. And what I want to do before we get cooking those is actually make a little bit of a flavor base for them. So I just want some oil into like a casserole dish or a Dutch oven, and then throw in some onions. At the base of so many good soups and stews is sauteed onion. So you may as well do it right if you're going to do it. And what I like to do is the onion plus a little bit of salt. Now I also want to add in some more spices here, cinnamon sticks and some whole cloves. Now you want to give those onions time to do their thing. I find that if you don't let the onions kind of cook down and you add your other ingredients, you kind of get this raw onion flavor even after, you know, hours of cooking. So that's my theory and I'm sticking to it. Okay, so time to add the ribs, and what I want to do is take off some of this marinade, or most of it, because I want to sear the beef in that oil and I don't want the marinade to burn. So just take that off and get those ribs into the pan. And again, there's technique here which is helping you get the ultimate flavor from your soup, because when you're getting that browning and the caramelization on the meat, you're also getting flavor. So give those beef ribs time to get a little bit of color and make sure you get all sides. Okay, so now that the beef has some nice color, we can add in our marinade and also some beef stock. Ah, that color is so delightful already. So just wait until you can see some little bubbles forming there, and then turn the heat down. And now we need to be really patient. Go and watch a Netflix show or something. We've got 4 hours now until that beef is really beautifully soft and tender. Okay, so I've been very patient because my kitchen is currently smelling amazing. But let's have a look in here, shall we? Oof. Oh my goodness. That beef is so soft. One little nudge and it's all gonna fall apart. Oh, look at that bone, comes clean out. And actually, so when I made this the first time, I figured out that this is the real danger point in the recipe, because this beef, have a look, oh my goodness, is so soft and ridiculously delicious right now that it's really hard to kind of wait. But wait you should, because there is another even more delicious step yet to come. Just wait and see. Okay, so just releasing all of that meat, and it just falls apart. So soft, tender. So now the real secret here, I think, this one little additional step which makes this amazing, is I'm going to take some of that red oil from the top of that braising liquid, and we're going to use this oil to fry that beautifully gelatinous beef into something that's kind of sticky and crispy and still tender and wonderful. It's really quite magical. You can leave a little bit of oil on the top there. I really love a noodle soup that has that lovely sheen of cooking oil on the top. Now I'm just going to strain off the other aromatics from the soup though. Now just use that ladle to push that soup through. I mean, we've worked so hard on all that flavor. I don't want to miss any of that beautiful broth. And now to bring everything together, just spoon a little bit of your lovely spiced oil into a pan. Add some of your slow braised beef. And then just keep that moving around in there until you get lovely little crispy bits. Now I've had my broth heating up. I'm going to cook my ramen noodles. Okay, so when your noodles are tender, grab those guys out. It's always a little messy, this one. That red sauce is delicious, but don't get it on your clothes. So now you want your beautiful, crispy but tender, spicy beef. Oh my God, this thing is just like a work of art. Ladle that hot soup all over the top. Now I've got some other bits and pieces here, just some finely sliced cabbage, an egg, some jalapeno chilies, and just a little bit of coriander at the end here. Wow, there you go. I mean, that is like literally a bowl of heaven for me. Oh. Now, I like to do this with a little squeeze of lime, so just put that on. And now I just need to get in here. Oh, wow. Holy smokes, that is so good. Guys, that flavor is so complex. You've got all the beautiful spices, you've got the chili spice as well, and like that beef, because it's sort of released all of its flavor into that soup. It's just, oh, it really is amazing. Noodles, beef. If there is one noodle soup you make this year, it's gotta be this one. Wow, 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 wow. Super easy miso ramen broth with porky buttered corn topping. This is one ramen noodle bowl you need to know how to make. Okay, so we're gonna start off with a miso tare, and this is like a flavoring or a seasoning that we're gonna put into our chicken stock a little bit later. I wanna start off with a little bit of mirin. So that's a sweet Japanese cooking wine. I'm gonna add some ginger and some garlic. Now when I can see that mirin bubbling away, I'm gonna pull it off the heat. And now I'm going to dissolve in there my miso paste. A little bit of that hot liquid and just move it around and dissolve it in the ladle, and tipping it out into the sauce as you go. Okay, so this is going to season our broth a little bit later on. Before we get to that part, I'm going to make all the toppings that we need. So the first one I want to make is a pork topping. So just want a little bit of oil. I'm going to add in some garlic. And then some pork mince. Now just spread that pork out and stir fry it until it's almost cooked. Now you want to add in some soy sauce. And I just like to let that simmer away until that soy sauce has been soaked up by all the pork and everything is like all salty and porky and there's not much liquid left in the pan. Okay, so you can see that most of that liquid is gone now. And trust me, that pork is really beautifully savory and salty, yum. So I'm just gonna transfer that into a bowl and I'm gonna cook my corn in the same pan because, you know, it's the weeknight and I wanna get things done quickly without too much washing up. So the next thing on our agenda is some buttery sweet corn. And for that, we need to start off with some butter, obviously. And some corn. I'm just using frozen corn kernels because I've always got them in the freezer. And cooking the corn in the same pan means it kind of picks up some of that porky juiciness from before. And you want a little bit of salt on there as well. Now just when that corn is heated through and all nice and buttery, then we can just take it off for later. So now we're ready to cook our noodles. All right, only one way to check out if these are ready. Just perfect. Now you just want to wrangle your noodles out of there. Straight into a large bowl. And now we just want to finish off the broth. So I've got some warm chicken stock here. I'm just using a packet one because, you know, we're taking shortcuts this time around. If you've got a homemade one, obviously use that. I'm going to pour in that miso mixture we made earlier. And let's just try this and see if we need any extra seasoning here. That is definitely a great way to doctor up a store-bought stock. That miso hides all manner of sins. We've got that beautiful ginger and garlic coming through and a little bit of sweetness from that mirin. Just great. So a generous helping of this over our noodles. And now we load this guy up with all our toppings. So some of that pork. and the sweet buttery corn. Some shredded cabbage just because I like the extra freshness and the crunch. And then I've got some very special soy sauce marinated eggs here. If you want to know how to make these guys, I've got a video on my YouTube channel on how to cook the perfect soy sauce or ramen egg. And then just a little sprinkle of sesame seeds on top of that pork. So there you go guys, a little cheats version of some buttered corn and pork ramen noodle soup. Of course, I'll test it out for you guys because, you know, gotta make sure you're getting the goods. That is a killer combination. Yum. This awesome combination of ramen noodles with like a creamy, spicy broth, spicy pork. I mean, you know, all the things that I love. And it happens to be very, very easy to make at home. Everyone's winning with this one. All right, let's do our spicy pork topping first of all. Just need a little bit of oil and some garlic and some pork mince. I'm just gonna grate some ginger straight in there. And now here comes the spicy. So Tantanmen is basically like a mashup of Sichuan dandan noodles and Japanese ramen noodles. So of course we're using a Sichuan chili bean paste, and this one is what kind of gives us the heat and like a bit of umami savoriness. Look, if you can't get a hold of this one, then go ahead and use a little bit of Korean gochujang. I won't tell anyone. You'll still get a really beautiful color and a little hit of umami. It'll be a slightly different flavor, but still delicious. Now to that, I'm gonna add a little dash of sake and some soy sauce. Now what we want to do here is let that pork absorb all of that tasty goodness in that sauce. So I'm just going to turn the heat down and let that simmer away until almost all of the liquid has been soaked up. So in the meantime, I'm going to mix up a little paste which is going to turn everything beautifully kind of nutty and creamy and just a little spicy as well. So to start off with, we need some sesame paste. Now this is a Japanese sesame paste and it's made from roasted sesame seeds. So it has a really beautiful, almost bitter kind of flavor and a very intense flavor. A lot of people say to substitute tahini for this one, but I actually think the flavor is a little bit more like peanut butter. So if I couldn't get a hold of the Japanese style sesame paste, I would just use some peanut butter. And after that, I want to add some soy sauce, some white vinegar, and a nice little hit of chili oil here. Now just give that a mix. And then I also want some spring onion here, and I just want the pale part. Just mix that through until you've got a rather thick paste. Okay, now just set that aside and let's wait for our pork. Okay, so take a look at this pork. You can see all that juiciness has now been absorbed and we are looking really good. I'm going to just pop that to the side. And we're going to get on to doing our broth. So unlike your usual ramen broth, this one is pretty much going to take the same amount of time that it will to boil your noodles. We just need to heat everything through. Just got some chicken stock and some unsweetened soy milk. So this is also going to add to the creaminess in the finished soup. And just while that's heating up, all I need to do to prepare my bowl is just add in sort of like a heaped tablespoon of that paste that we made earlier. And now that that soup is piping hot, pour that over the top. Encourage everything in there to make friends. Now I've got some ramen noodles here that just going to tip straight in there. And now we want some pork. A little bit of greenery here. I've got some bok choy that I've just briefly put into some hot water. And of course, because for me a ramen bowl needs an egg, and then just a little sprinkling of spring onion. And there you go guys. Wow, if that is not one joyful looking bowl, I don't know what is. Look at that, look at the little bit of spicy red oil there coming off the pork and seeping into that creamy broth. Oh. Wow. I mean, it tastes so complex. It really does taste like you've been simmering that thing for like days, honestly.